Aggregates and clay mining in Texas provides the building blocks for our homes, roads, highways, cities, and much, much more. Texas is the nation's fourth largest producer of clay and aggregates. These homegrown products are critical to the state's continued economic growth. Mining aggregates and clay locally keeps construction costs affordable and allows Texas to build the infrastructure demanded by our growing population. Texas Aggregates and Clay, expanding the Lone Star State's infrastructure and economy.
Most people who have contact with mining have contact with aggregate mining. They see the quarries, they see the sand and gravel pits, and I'm not sure they all appreciate how fundamentally important those resources are, because they provide the basic materials needed for concrete, for building roads, for building houses, for building skyscrapers.
The aggregate industry is an industry that you just sort of take for granted. It's the major ingredient for doing everything from building road infrastructure in our state, to home foundations, to buildings, just about every kind of commercial development that you can come up with. There is a great need for the aggregate industry.
The Texas Mining Reclamation Association is an industry trade association for the mining folks in the state. We have over 100 members that represent mining companies, electric utility companies, and a lot of suppliers of mining-related products and services in the state. As a voice of the mining industry, we support the balance between mineral production, environmental protection, economic strength, and public welfare.
Minerals are society's building blocks. Rocks and minerals are present in nearly every building and structure, from skyscrapers, hospitals, and bridges, to houses in which we live.
Texas is a state rich in natural resources that are economically important to the state. Texas mining produces the brick, the stones, and mortar that constructs our homes and buildings. Texas mining produces crushed stone, sands, gravel, and cement for highways, bridges, and airports used for transportation and for the industrial projects that purify our water.
We build the cities that people depend on.
Aggregates play an integral role in our everyday lives, from building our homes and roads to our schools and hospitals. Aggregates are uncrushed or crushed gravel, sand, crushed stone or rock that form the major part of concrete. Clay products are the bricks used in home construction, and clay for various ceramic products.
There's over 300,000 miles of roads and streets in Texas that are all made from the aggregates. There's about 1,800 airports in Texas. The runways that go into those all come from the aggregates. There's 28 ports in Texas, and if you're familiar with ports, there's a lot of concrete to go into the ports to get them there, plus the unloading and the docks. Over 10,000 miles of railroad. A lot of railroad ballast goes into these railroads to move this freight all around Texas.
There are very vast clay reserves in Texas. Texas is a very large producer of face brick for housing and commercial buildings.
Aggregates provide the necessary roads, the highways, and housing that Texas needs to serve the growing population. And efforts to accelerate highway construction and other infrastructure development in Texas are entirely dependent on adequate supplies of these essential materials.
As we want to continue to further the economic development here within Texas, which is going to include both housing as well as infrastructure, highways, and things like that, you need aggregates to be able to play a vital role in the construction of those.
Most people know the growth that the state of Texas is supposed to have in the next 20 years. And so without the capability of building the infrastructure and the need, and the major ingredient for that, to a large degree, will be the aggregate industry.
Well, the mining of aggregates is important to a growing state like Texas, whose population and economy is growing. We're going to demand more and more aggregates, and that industry becomes increasingly important to our well-being in the future.
The availability of a supply of quality clay and aggregate products at reasonable cost is crucial to the ongoing economic growth of the state of Texas.
Not only do we need to have access to a good supply, an abundant supply of aggregates within this market, but you need to have high quality aggregates. You need to have it close to the places that they're going to have construction.
It's very important for us, for Texas, to be able to use locally produced products rather than get them from somewhere out of state or even bring them into the ports along the East Coast. And the reason for that is the aggregates themselves are not that expensive. What does cost is the transportation, especially with the price of diesel. So the more that we have to bring in, the more we have to import into the local areas, the more cost that it's going to be incurred by those doing the construction. And what ultimately happens, the taxpayers, for the most part, are paying for that.
We always build our production facilities at the mining locations where the clay deposits are located. The trucking costs to bring materials from out of state or from long distances really is prohibitive in our final cost. Producing the brick products close to the mining area makes a product that is economical for the consumer to purchase.
Aggregate materials, crushed stone and gravel, are relatively low-value resources. The longer distance you have to haul them by truck or train, the more expensive they become. So it's very important to our economy and to our competitiveness that we develop our aggregates locally and that we use them locally. So the closer those aggregates are to where they're used, mainly growing cities, the less expensive they are, the cheaper our construction is, and that benefits us all, citizens, industries, and the economy in general.
One of the major cost drivers in this industry, it's the transportation of the aggregate. And even though there are states that surround Texas that are probably somewhat as rich as we are, the closer you have that product to you, the more economical it is, and having local access to the aggregate industry is very, very important from a cost standpoint.
The importance of the clay and aggregates industry to the economy of Texas is impossible to overstate. Texas is the fourth largest producer of clay and aggregates in the United States, with 123 stone plants, 227 sand and gravel quarries, and 24 clay and brick plants. In Texas, total employment directly tied to stone, rock, and sand operations exceeds 7,000 permanent jobs.
If you start splintering, those direct, out to other jobs and other industries, I mean, you're talking about, tens of thousands of other jobs that are somewhat derivatives, if you will, of just the aggregate industry alone.
The impact that the aggregates industry has on the local economy is pretty vast. Not only do we provide jobs for people that work within the quarries as well as within the overall organization, but we open up new infrastructure, and the highways of course have the definite impact as they're being built, but it provides new ways to get to market, provides ability for trucks to transport their goods. So pretty much everything depends on the aggregate industry for the transportation of materials into the markets of the consumers of which we depend on.
One of the questions that come up usually when we're done mining is what are we going to do with the property? Several of the things that have been done is Fiesta, Texas. That's in an old quarry. The Quarry Golf Course is in an old quarry. Some of the San Antonio Zoo is actually in an old quarry. So it's a lot of things that can be done. Another area is in the sand and gravel. Sand and gravel are river deposits, old river deposits, and so a lot of those materials are dug underwater, and we create a lot of wetland areas when we're finished mining. We create lakes, ponds for the ducks and the wildlife and fish, etc.
If we don't maintain a very viable, healthy, and expanding aggregates industry in Texas, we're going to increase the costs of all levels of development in the state, not to the benefit of any of us. So it is important that Texas supports and develops its aggregate industry in all parts of the state.